My name is Peter Cook, and I'm an architect, and I was one of the founders of Archigram in 1961. Archigram comprised of Warren Chalk, Ron Heron, Dennis Crompton, David Greene, Michael Webb, and myself. Archigram, I think, was a very important stage for all of us. I think that we have probably never had such a creative and exotic phenomenon in our lifetimes. Part of the group, who tended to be the older end, got together working for the London County Council. Then there was another predominantly younger group. Two of us worked in the same office. We started the broadsheet called Archigram. The first edition of Archigram was in 1961, and then by the time of the second issue of it, by having heard about the other group but not really known them personally, we made contact and they joined in. And then by the time of the third issue, we all contrived to be working for the same office, which was Taylor Woodrow Design Group, run by a man called Theo Crosby, who had been quite a major figure in the London architectural art scene. He encouraged us and found us some money from the Gulbenkian Foundation to do an exhibit at the ICA. At that point, we were still not called Archigram, but people started calling us Archigram. And at a certain point, we registered the name. So it was the sort of thing that can happen in a city like London at a certain time. There's a sufficient number of interesting people that they form subgroups, and the subgroups coalesce. And in the coalescence, I think, was the strength, because the LCC group had built buildings. And the other three of us hadn't. We were more or less fresh out of school. And so it was a mixture of the chemistry and the opportunity, and probably the spirit of the moment. There was a lot of building going on in London at that time. It was mostly pretty chunky, or, the usual developer stuff. And we were sort of angry young men. We were sort of a bit irritated by this. So we said, hey, come on, let's do, what about this? It also, I think, touched a moment, the sort of brutalist architecture, which we, in a sense, were the children of, had established itself. There wasn't anything else that had quite come along after it. It was a bit pleased with itself, actually. And we were the naughty boys who suggested a lot of other things. And we were reading space comics. We were influenced by Buckminster Fuller. Warren Chalk, the late Warren Chalk, also dug up another very interesting facet, and he, being the oldest of the group, would have been in a position to observe it, which was in the Second World War. For good or ill, there were amazing inventions. Timber technology, glues, jointing, bits of wire, bits of string, funny things you could make with a cheap machine that would still keep... If you combine that with Buckminster Fuller, don't even no further than that, you have a very, very interesting portmanteau of technologies and ideas. And at first, almost nobody took any notice. I mean, we had difficulty selling more than 100 copies of the first Archigram. But by the time it was then taken up by a very famous critic of the period called Peter Rayner Banham, he got hold of issues of Archigram 4 and took them to the United States and put them under the nose of a lot of very famous people. And suddenly it was known worldwide.